Okay, so Heinrich will be handling the field climate training itself and telling us a bit more about PESEL instruments. And I will be talking a bit more about the value of Metals SA's offering to South African producers. So in short, I will be talking more about the why. I stumbled across a few animations by CropLife about climate change in agriculture, and I thought it well to share it with you. So climate change is causing temperatures and water levels to rise, resulting in disrupted plant growth, reduced soil health and yields, less biodiversity and loss of farmland. And farmers can weather this climate change by using the right tools at the right time. Without modern technologies, farmers may not have accurate information about their fields to best manage them. And precision ag ensures farmers use the right products at the right times. Also, climate change is making water more scarce and difficult to manage in agriculture. It increases heat, drought, and salt in the soil. And precision ag can conserve water and increase soil moisture. And probably the most interesting stats is that climate change contributed to $29 billion, or that is about 460 billion rand in losses, or this can also be amounted to 76 million hectares worth of losses. These losses are from 2005 to 2015, and obviously with climate change getting worse, the losses will also be worse in future. But yeah, I also found these very interesting statistics in an article in Farmers Weekly, in which they say that it would cost 111 trillion rand between now and 2050 to successfully combat climate change. So just to put it in perspective, a trillion, I had to Google it, a trillion has 12 zeros, so that's quite a hefty amount. That would amount to 3.83 trillion rand per year. And currently the world is spending 1.83 trillion rand per year. So we would have to double what we are currently spending to successfully combat climate change. But I'm not going to preach to you about how to combat climate change. Then I would have invited Greta Thunberg to do the talking, or I would have chained myself to a tree or something. At the end of the day, there are two commodities that farmers and actually all of us would like to have more of. I'm going to give you a few seconds just to think of the two things that everyone wishes they had more of. Okay, so for me and for everyone, time. I think everyone would agree that we all wish that we have more time. And the second thing is more money. And ironically, time also equals money. Earlier this year, UPL was destroyed. There was 1,600 different types of chemicals that burned for 11 days straight. And it has been described as the biggest chemical disaster to date in South Africa. So we can also just imagine what influence this will have on the climate and climate change in South Africa. This also led to many shortages of agrochemicals in South Africa. And interestingly, I got some stats in an article on Netwerk 24. And in the past year, the prices of agrochemicals has increased with 40%. Glyphosate, the prices has tripled. And they say that in the coming few months, it will increase by 30% more. This is because of shortages at Chinese factories, because of COVID and floods. And also, interestingly enough, because of oxygen, which is needed for the glyphosate production, which is now being allocated to the healthcare industry for COVID-19 patients. So I hear that someone's mic is on. Can you maybe just mind muting it? Thank you. Also, fuel accounts for about 13% of a farmer's input costs. And recently, that has also increased the price of fuel. Fertilizer amounts for about 30 to 35% of a maize producer's variable production costs. And the price of fertilizer has in the last year increased by about 65%. So in short, we need to utilize what we have to our disposal in the most efficient way possible. And Dr. Heiner will elaborate about the functions of FieldClimate and exactly what it can do and what the farmer can do with it. But one of the functions that will be most valuable will be the work planning function, where FieldClimate will be able to give you an idea of when would be the best time to apply your crop protection product so that you don't waste that product or that application, and so that it is as effective as possible. Also, in the same way, it will tell you when is the best time to apply your fertilizer. Disease models, in turn, will be able to tell you the risk of a disease in your fields, and this will help you to see when a preventative application is necessary against a disease. And in the end, with this, you will save time, water, money, and chemicals, since we also have the shortage in South Africa. And so I would just like to conclude with Pestle Instruments' slogan, which really sums their business and their value proposition up very well. And that is turning information into profits. And that is exactly what this proposition or this offering gives to you, is to not only have the data of the weather station and to see what the data is, but also to gain insights into what you can do with that data and what you can do with what you have to your disposal on your farm, to best use it in a way to be the most efficient as possible. So yeah, that sums up the why. Dr. Heiner, are you ready with your presentation to tell us a bit more about exactly what FieldClimate does and how to use it?
Yes, I will. I'm here. I'm ready for the presentation. Thank you very much for waiting for me. I have to apologize this mistake. Sorry for this. Now I will try to start my presentation. Okay. Now it's probably a little too late, but anyhow, I will go with you through the agenda. I think the last topic was presented wonderful to you, and now I will start with the topics which been labeled to be the first topic. So I'd like to introduce Pestle Instruments, our products, our services to you. After this, I like to enter into some specific topics which have been requested inside FieldClimate, like how to view and export station data, how do we present the weather forecast and what is this weather forecast, what are our work planning tools, a little about disease models, degree days and chilling units, notifications and warnings. Pestle Instruments, where do we come from? What support can we give to wine growers, fruit growers, farmers, gardeners, and greenkeepers? These are the first topics I like to discuss with you and I like to show you. So where are we coming from? We are based in an apple, wine and fruit growing area in the south of Austria. And this is where we come from, really. So I'm not an Austrian, I'm coming from wine and fruit growing in Germany, in southwestern Germany. My parents and later my brother and now my niece and my nephew are operating a wine and fruit farm with direct marketing at the border to Swiss. And this is where I grew up and which problems I was confronted with for my lifetime. But here in Pestle Instruments, in the year 88, Gottfried was addressed by the wish of local apple growers. They wanted to reduce the use of pesticides and they wanted to improve the effectiveness of pesticides applied. At this time, Pestle Instruments was it was not Instruments, Pestle was a small manufacturer of planting machines for vegetables. And with this wish, Pestle started with electronics. Pestle Instruments later started to develop and produce weather stations and plant disease models for fruit growers, and a little later for wine growers too. This is what Pestle Instruments is doing now. This is our dashboard where we can control all the stations we have outside, all the stations which are active. We can see all the users, we can see the upload status and so on. We have at the moment, these are values from Sunday, 55,000 effective stations, activated stations out in the world. We have active 34,830 users worldwide. And the other little curves are showing hourly update status of the station. You can see here what are the different type of stations which are connected in different numbers. So this is our summary board where we are looking for the stations. This gives you a little impression about the distribution in the world. You see South Africa has quite a reasonable coverage too. Most stations we have are in Europe, European Community. Turkey is a big market. In South America, Brazil and Argentina are traditionally big markets for us. Chile in some extent too, but not that much. And then we have a strong presence in US and in Central America. Australia, we are along the coastal lines, clearly. What support can we give to wine growers, fruit growers, farmers, gardeners and greenkeepers? First of all, where we come from is the plant protection thing. Our plant disease models show when there is disease pressure and when there are important infection dates. Whether during application can influence the success of the plant protection work dramatically, whether after application decides how long a pesticide cover is given. The second big area we work in is soil water management, evapotranspiration data for irrigation management, crop factor corrected evapotranspiration, and on the other side, soil moisture monitoring for irrigation control. The third working field in gardening and farming is the work planning. For the work planning, we have our weather forecast coming from our weather forecast partner, which is a reliable base to do a weekly work planning. And short-term work planning is done by a combination of the precipitation the field has received, the soil moisture, the measured wind speed, and the forecast. I want to show you a little about our product portfolio. So we name ourselves an IoT company. IoT stands for Internet of Things. So we have the Metos hardware devices in the field. On these devices there is a software called firmware normally, and all our devices are equipped with communication modules. Most frequent we use in communication, we use the telephone net, the mobile phone network with the standard everything started, which is GPRS. Later there was UMTS, and now everything moves into over LTE into this low power wide area network tools like NB-IoT and LTE Cat-M. All the data are going to our software platform, into our web servers, which is on the cloud. This is operated by ourselves, and it's placed in a service center here in Graz, belonging to the Austrian telecom company, which gives us the direct service on a big backbone. On this service, we have the FieldClimate ecosystem supported. It supports mobile phone apps, and it supports at the other side the web platform FieldClimate, and it supports all our partners worldwide, which are doing their own software solutions with its API. The product family we have starts with what we call virtual weather stations. These are weather stations which are based on the last hour of weather forecast, which is relatively safe. This gives us the possibility to deliver weather data to every place of the world, basically, without having a physical instrument there. Then we have the low-cost branch, which we call low rain. These are simple devices to measure rain, temperature, and relative humidity. Or it can be reduced just to rain or just to temperature and relative humidity. They can be equipped with simple soil moisture sensors too. Then we have the micrometers branch, which is very important from now and in the future, because that's the branch totally based on the new communication devices like NB-IoT and LTE Cat-M. Besides, we have the emitters Echo D3 branch and the emitters 3.3. These are the two branches you are used with to work in South Africa, and these two device types, they are the base in the South African project. Beside of these weather stations, cameras may be quite important in your application too. That's the reason I'm talking a little about the camera branch here too. To go directly into the devices, we look for the South African market. This would be the micrometers NB-IoT. This is what we think our working horse, our main product from now on for the future. It combines the necessary set of atmospheric sensors for agriculture, like we can see here, rain gauge, temperature, relative humidity, wind speed and wind direction based on an ultrasonic system, a global radiation sensor. So these are the main sensors for atmospheric data. Beside of this, it can be equipped with a sensor for wet and dry bulb, what is quite important for frost warning, and it can carry all different types of soil moisture sensors, but in a reduced set. This means we can measure 2 watermarks, we can measure 2 volumetric soil moisture sensors, and we can measure 1 multiple depths probe like the AquaCheck or the Sentec drill and drop on this station. So it combines both atmospheric data needed for agriculture and soil moisture data. So this is basically a station combining all sensors which are relevant for farmers, for fruit growers, and so on. The Echo D3 is a station which is mainly designed for soil moisture monitoring. This station will phase out for us on the long time on the market, but it's still available. The Echo D3, like the emitters 3.3, are designed to handle a very, very big number of sensors. So they're very much designed to go into research projects too, where a lot of sensors are needed. They are actually using for communication either GPRS, UMTS, or the LTE network, but on the long run, they will be converted into NB-IoT CAT-M1 because on the long run, NB-IoT and CAT-M1 are the networks which are worldwide designed for this type of data transmission, which we have to do here. Beside of the weather stations, we have our camera products. Here, first of all, CropView. CropView is a device which transmits you every day a photo of your field or your orchard. Here we are doing special services for orchards, so we are able to follow a fruit in its growth. This was developed first of all for apples, but it can be applied for peaches and citrus in the same way. So the system tells you for every day the fruit growth you have. This data analytics are done on the server with artificial intelligence. Beside of the crop view, we have the eye scout. These are our traps. They are camera based too. That's the reason I refer to this in the camera thing. These are insect traps. Insect traps which have been in the first way developed for pheromone trapped insects like moths, but we have them available for flies too, working with feeding lure. We have them available for different bugs. This is all the close trap. Then beside of this close trap, we have a color trap where we make a photo of a sticky plate which is exposed. This color trap we use for an example for western corn borer, but it can be used for whitefly, it can be used for trips we work on at the moment, and we work at the moment in several projects to make the color trap usable for aphids, because aphids are a very important pest family, and especially because they are virus transmitting, and so we have several projects where we are going to monitor aphids to date the sprays in the best way to stop virus transmission. All this is only working when we have the sensors which are needed for this. This is a set of the most important sensors, but there are much more sensors we can support. So very important, first of all, is always the rain gauge. Our rain gauge has a resolution of 0.2 millimeters, so it gives us the rain coarse enough, and it's able to measure up to 12 millimeters rain per minute. The next important sensor is temperature and relative humidity. And for our disease models, the leaf wetness sensor is very, very important. For fruit growers, the wet and dry bulb temperature is a very, very important sensor, because this is the sensor they use to switch on and off the frost irrigation systems. Then we have a mechanic wind speed, and we have the ultrasonic wind speed. The pyranometer is needed to calculate evapotranspiration together with a wind speed sensor. In the soil moisture sensing, we are supporting our own small and low-cost PI54 volumetric sensor. We are supporting drill and drop sensors from Centec. These are multiple depths probes. We are supporting AquaCheck, the subsurface probe. These are multi-depth probes too. We are supporting as tensiometric sensor the watermark sensor from Irometer, and we are supporting the tensiometers from Irometer. So the digital solution, this is the slide I showed before. For our digital solutions, our main instrument thing is FieldClimate. The FieldClimate shows the data in two different ways. On one side, it shows it's device-centric, so you know your serial number and you can see all the data from a device with this and this serial number. And on the other side, you can create fields. This is the premium, the farm view, where you can create a farm with fields and crop zones. And you can say, in this field and crop zone, there is this and this weather station, or this and this weather station is relevant for this field. And then you can see the results crop-centric. So you see the disease models which are needed for this crop. You see the evapotranspiration data calculated for this crop, and so on. So these are the two ways we present data in FieldClimate. The FieldClimate gives an API to. This is an interface which can be used by partners which want to set up their own databases or which want to set up their own applications. In the FieldClimate, we have a bunch of solutions which are put together. So we have the weather data display, which I want to show a little more in detail. We have the reporting, warning, and notification tools in the FieldClimate. We have the weather forecast. We have the work planning services. We have disease and pest models, which have been historically and in future too very important for us as a company. We have insect monitoring with our computer vision applications. We have crop monitoring with the computer vision. We have the soil moisture monitoring and water balance models. And in the last months, I'm personally looking very much into animal welfare services. I have several projects in dairy farms, and my colleague in Canada has some projects in feedlots where we look in animal welfare problems. So this is an example for the weather data and notification display, the weather forecast, but I will do a little closer into weather forecast. But here, the theoretic thing, our weather forecast uses the email to give a more site-specific weather forecast. So Meteor Blue, our weather forecast partner, calculates every 12 hours a weather forecast for the whole week, forecast for the next 24 data, for a grid of 3 × 3 kilometers worldwide. And this is what they use on their website. This is what we access from their website. But in the case of our corporation, they are accessing a 24-hour data slug from our weather stations, and they filtered this weather forecast, the calculations of our weather data for the local site. So we are getting a very localized weather forecast from them, which is presented on our platform. The work planning we do based on this weather forecast is different models, so they are always based on weather forecast and where needed weather data from the past. So we are looking for ideal times to do fertilizer applications. We are looking for stability. Can you enter the field with a trailer? Can you enter the field with a machine? We are looking if the moisture is in a good situation to till your fields. So what we call tillageability. We are looking for sowing windows. Sowing windows, first of all, general, but some plants, some crops have special needs in the sowing. These needs are mostly based on temperature, and we are calculating for different crops if the soil temperature is good enough to do the sowing. So this is potato. This is sugar beet, this is corn, this is canola, and it's sunflower. Then we show, is the weather good or supporting plant protection work. This is a general model, first of all, but then we are looking into the special conditions for tree crop, viticulture, and potato too. We are looking into the weather, if it's good enough for harvest. So here we are looking in the harvest for fruit and grape, sugar beet and potato, small cereals, high and soilage preparation. As an extra model, which may be important in South Africa too, we are looking for the grass fire danger index. This is a wish which came from our friends in Brazil, and we implemented their model, which is mostly used in Australia, to my knowledge, which is looking for grass fires. But I guess grass fire is an important point in some parts of South Africa too. Disease and pest models are historically and for future very important for us. A plant disease model describes or uses the weather needs of a disease to say this disease can spread now, either with a simple risk model where we say now there is a high risk of this disease, or with a model which looks directly into infection. One of our most important infection models goes back to South African research. Wolf Schwabe from the advisory service for apple growers in the Cape area has made a lot of research in the 70s and 80s on apple scab infections. And in result of his research, he developed an infection model for apple scab, and this model is used in our apple disease package. So this model looks for Conidia infections and for ascospore infections, means for summer cycle infections, and for spring and overwintering infection with which the epidemic starts. In total, we are working with 80 disease models for more than 35 crops. And all this data is available in FieldClimate and on the FieldClimate app. The insect monitoring, here you see an example. So these are the photos which are coming from the field, and then our artificial intelligence application detects which insect is there, marks this insect, and counts these insects. This is crop view, how we can see a crop growing in a field. This is the application based on crop view to look into the growth of apples. So these apples are automatically detected, and then you can select a couple of them, and these apples you are following in the growth during the season. Water management, here we are showing the different graphs coming out of our soil moisture sensors. So this can be a single line for every sensor. It can be an average graph or a stacked graph. There are different ways to present the soil moisture data. Which way is selected by the user is mostly very much depending on the discussions which is locally. So Americans are preferring different graphs than Europeans because their irrigation discussion is a little different from the European. In South Africa, it may be a similar thing. Okay, now I want to go a little direct into the FieldClimate application. Okay, let's look a little into these detailed questions which have been. So, first of all, how to view and export station data. So when you go to FieldClimate, you normally need an account there. For this account, we need a username, we need a password, We like to have the first name and the last name of the person and the email address. So we are not asking anymore for any physical address because email is enough for us to address people. Then we like to know which language is preferred by the user and in which country the user is placed. And we have to check if it's a real user and not a robot. But with this, you are getting your account, and with the account, you can work on FieldClimate. When you are in FieldClimate and you have a new account, it may be needed that you add a station. Because an account, first of all, is empty and it needs the weather station the account should be used with. So for this, we need the serial number of the station, and with the serial number, every user gets the station keys. This is a pair of keys. We name them key 1 and key 2. A station which is entered into your account with key 1 gives the user the ability to do settings. So he can set thresholds for notifications, he can set the time zone, he can set the location. In some stations, most of the stations are getting the location from GPS or from GNSS chips anyhow, but on some stations the location has to be set. But he can set this, and he can, when he enters the station, he has to enter a station name too, because for most people it's not really nice to work with a number. It's mostly easier to work with the name of the field or the name of the city or village where the station is placed. When the stations are entered, we are getting such a station list like here, which is relatively full. This is a station list with a lot of stations in Netherlands where I'm working on the data at the moment. When we have the station ended, we can see this data in graphs. And we can see the data in tables too, but normally we will look much more for the graphs and for the time series of the data which we are getting. We can see the sensors separately. We can see for sensors grouped what view we prefer. There was the question, how can we export this data? So in an interactive way, we can export the table which of the data we've seen with this export button. So, for example, when we want to have the data of 1 month, we select the monthly view of the data, or we select the calendar time where we want to see the data, and then we can export this as a table. But when we need to prepare a report, we can export this data as a graph too, and we can use this graph directly in our reportings. This is the button next to the export as a table. Now I'm coming to the weather forecast. How we present the weather forecast. The weather forecast, first of all, we can present as a 7-day forecast or a 3-day forecast. This, what I have here, is the graphical presentation prepared by Pesel Instruments. It uses the same presentation style like we use for our weather and soil moisture data. Beside of this view, we are offering views which are prepared by Meteor Blue. These are these different meteograms. This is a meteogram, and this is the agriculture, the Meteor Agra. And the Meteor Blue gives some agriculture hints too. So like here we get a spray window. It gives a forecast on the ET on this, and it gives a forecast on more detailed on wind, that we can see which wind we have to expect at which time of the day. This would be The second graph is what they call Meteor 1. This is a pictogram showing this data too. We are presenting these pictograms, which are prepared by Meteor Blue. First of all, to have Meteor Blue has a lot of clients, institutional clients, company clients, and so on in Europe, which are using these pictograms. And we want to offer our user the same view they may have in other applications where they use Meteor Blue. Beside of this, Meteor Blue offers us an 14-day forecast. This is here. This can be displayed here. This 14-day forecast gives the probability, because as longer we are away from now, as lower is the probability of the forecast we have. And these are the graphs here, which people are used when they use the apps of Meteor Blue on their phone, which a lot of people do because it's a very, very good weather forecast. So me and my family, an example, we are planning our Sunday and Saturday activities and our camping activities very much based on the weather forecast of Meteor Blue. So we are very used to these pictograms here, and that's the reason we show these pictograms too. Beside of this, we are using the precipitation radar. I wanted to show you something, but when I prepared this presentation on Sunday, in all the stations I was working with and the areas I was working with, there was nothing to show because there's no rain there has been no rain in Europe this Sunday morning, and so I could not show you any view on the precipitation radar. But where the precipitation radar is available, this is a really excellent view, because we can, with this precipitation radar, we have a wonderful no-cast. This means we see what may be in 15 minutes. And this is when you're really in the field and you plan your next activities and you're in a situation where the weather is not stable, it's very helpful to know it will rain in half an hour, or it will rain in 15 minutes. When it rains now, you don't need the information, but this distance to rain gives the possibility to prepare yourself for the rain, and so this precipitation radar is very helpful. A little more detailed into the work planning, which is very much connected to the weather forecast. So this would be the graphs for fertilizer treatments, what we call plant nutrition. You see, we give a value for every hour between 0 and 3 as higher the number of fertilizer treatment. The grass fire index, it's a similar thing. We are looking for, we are giving a similar graph. And all the other graphs like field accessibility, tillability, sowing window, and plant protection, they are very much made the same than this. Okay, then there was the question for the degree day and for these accumulation tools. So we can accumulate degree days, that's what's displayed here. This we do on base of the temperature sensor. We can calculate over a start date and end date. We can define a minimum temperature and an upper threshold. This here would be the minimum and upper threshold, which is normally used for insect calculations. The chilling units, you define the sensor you use you define the time, the thresholds, and then it calculates different types of chilling units. So we calculate the chilling units defined here, number of hours, number of Sorry. No. I hope you see it again. Number of hours, numbers of days, like defined here. This is called number of hours, number of days. Then we do this with maximum min temperature because some people prefer the calculation based on maximum min temperatures. This would be every hourly temperature. Then we are calculating for chilling units hours smaller than 7.2 degrees Celsius, and we are calculating the Utah chilling hour models. Beside of this, we are using this accumulation tool to calculate a rain sum, which is very often needed too. The notification services, in the notification services, we are having different types of notification. The old standard notification is based on text messages, SMS messages. For this, we need a telephone number and a name. And then we can set the thresholds, which sensor we select, the minimum and the maximum value on which we would like to get the threshold. So I think I'm very much at the end of my time. So I could leave it here, or I could go into a couple of generic questions. What is preferred?
Do we have any questions for Dr. Reiner?
Karina, maybe just from my side, Neil here. I think thank you very much, Dr. Reiner, for the presentation. I think maybe I would like Andre Erasmus, if you can maybe just come in with a few comments or questions regarding the disease modeling and the needs and the way forward regarding implementing this in specific crops, if you don't mind. I think my only question would be is to what extent do we need to verify the disease models under South African conditions before we can start rolling out the field climate and really making an impact from a disease modeling perspective? Or are you comfortable that we can start with the different models as it is and then fine tune with specific parameters that we discuss with clients?
Can I answer this directly, or first of all, it's a little, let's say we have our disease models which are used widely, and they are very much tested and safe and done. This is first of all models for fruit and wine growing. These models you can use straight away. There is one specific thing with these high value crops. In these high value crops, we do plant protection with the aim to have really no disease. And this no disease makes these models working everywhere, because we want to have no disease. The models are based on the biology of the pathogen, and when we use this model, we can get a much better control because we have a much better understanding of what's going on in the field. When we talk about broad acreage crops, the goal is a little different, because in broad acreage crops, you're always discussing about an economic damage. So your goal is not to have no disease. And with this question of economic damage, you need a strategy. And this strategy is mostly local. So the disease model is the same, but the strategy then is the question. In fruits and wine, strategy is simple. It has to be clean. Bam. But when we talk about wheat, canola, sugar beet, the strategy is the pesticide application has to give payback. You don't want to be 100% disease-free. You want to be economically fine.
Hi, Neil. Thanks, Dr. Heine, Dr. Heinrich. Yeah, it's very interesting. We've got a huge monitoring project running for potato tuber moth and two-type Filuta on potatoes, and we want to, in an area called the Sandveld potato area, and there's about 5,500 hectares of potatoes being grown throughout the year there. So we want to implement, or there's a lot of the farmers the questions are, why don't we implement disease models? And yeah, with potato lake blight, I've seen it can completely ruin a crop. So
Yes,
people are very, very, very voorzichtig. What's voorzichtig in English is they don't want any disease. So and the area varies hugely. So at the end of the day, I don't know whether you've met Dr. Freddie Denner from. He worked on models from many years, and he said that they didn't necessarily spray less, but they sprayed more accurately. But at the end of the day, the farmers want to spray less, which I completely understand. So, and it's also the second thing. It is mostly the irrigated areas. So you need to take the irrigation and the rainfall and the weather patterns and put it into one basket, if I can call it that, and make your predictions on that. So, but we're going to try it. Yes, we are definitely going to try it.
Potato late blight is a specific thing. Potato late blight is something like it's state building. So in every potato growing state which thinks we are a real potato growing country has its own potato late blight model. That's something you have to accept. That's how it is. So there's no real potato growing country without late blight models. Netherlands is a special potato growing country. They have 4. So that's because they are the best potato growers of the world. So one potato late blight model is for sure not enough for Netherlands. That's how the situation is. So when we talk about potato late blight, first we should evaluate this political question. Is there a South African model which we have to use? If this is the case, we implement the South African model. If South Africa uses models which are worldwide used, and we have quite a lot of models implemented, we use this model which we have already implemented. If this is not the case too, we can start the question from the production goal. There is a model we like very much from Maine, US. This model comes from seed potato. And this model is called no blight. No blight means in seed potato you want to have no blight. So this is a model, when you follow this model, you spray a lot. But your target is to have no blight. There are other models coming from industrial potato, where your question is different, where you say, I want to have a high yield, I want to have low costs. In this case, you look to spray less. That's it's a little, so, but I would suggest we could make a stakeholder meeting of all people implemented in this potato thing, and we could discuss it in detail. And I could show you the different models we have.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. I had a look on the internet, and I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Bill Fry from the US. He visited South Africa a while ago, and we had quite a few chats about potato late blight and the modeling. But even in South Africa, if you move from the Sandveld into the northern part, it's completely different areas. The Western Free State compared to the Eastern Free State, which is a colder area and a hotter area, and very hot in the Northern Transvaal with summer rainfall. So the variation is huge, and you rightly said that a model for a country is specifically modeled for that area. And looking at South Africa with the different growing regions, we'll have a model for each area. And something that Bill Fry mentioned was that they've got a a system in the US called US Blight, where if somebody picked up blight, they put it on the net, and that is distributed right through the potato growing area, showing that somewhere there was an infection period and that they should watch out, which I think is it's a very good thing to do.
And US potato growing areas, they are in the north of US, they are either in the northeast where they are cold and humid, or they are in the north of the Midwest where they are hot and dry in summer. So they have the same. There is no model used in whole US. Maine has their own model, and Idaho has different models. That's because their growing situation is variable. And when a growing situation can be that extreme, I had a project where I have not been involved. I only had the broken project at the end in Philippines. In Philippines, in the rain season, there is not the question when to spray. There's just the question, when do I have to spray again? Because you have constantly, when it's constantly raining, you have constantly infections. And the only thing you can worry is, oh, do I need to spray again after 3 days, 4 days, 5 days? So the question can be really, depending on what climate situation you have, very different from the application side.
Yeah, you mentioned in some instances it's not if you're going to spray, it's only when you're going to spray. And yeah, I think that's the way we should go forward. Even pending your intervals, if you can change your intervals by a day or two, or even whether you should spray contact or systemic products. If you can predict that, it will make a huge contribution at the end of the day.
Yeah, but what systemic products do you have available?
Excuse me?
What systemic products do you have available?
Yeah, we rely mainly on the cinnamonic acid derivatives, which is locally systemic. Redomol or the metalaxyl group is not being used anymore because there's
yeah, that's what I assumed.
There's documented resistance, which is being checked every year. Some isolators send it to Dr. Bill Fry, which they check, and the shift is, if the shift is there, the shift it hasn't even moved back to susceptible. Performacarb is not used quite a lot. Cymoxanol is used quite frequently, and then we add the phosphoric acids, which make a huge contribution to the efficacy of the products. So yeah, and chlorothalonol and mancozeb we try to steer away lately, and I think diethiamine needs to be developed for the control of potato late blight. So, but that's in short that the products that we used.
Yeah, that's a similar situation everywhere. Only Russia was saying for very long that they have no, that they can use Redomil Gold, that they have no cymoxanil resistance.
Yeah.
Metalaxyl resistance. So that's
maybe we should go visit Russia.
Now, I could never verify it, but they for very long said that they have no resistance. That's was, and all the chemical companies were very happy with this decision.
Yeah, but we're definitely going to implement weather stations and run some of the modules, and it will take time to verify the model versus the efficacy and how you can rely on the data that the model gives you, if you're accurate or if you're not accurate. Coming back to the tuber moth monitoring that we're doing, we haven't got any levels of population levels that will give you an indication of where you're going to pick up problems or not. So after 4 years, we've got a gut feel of where we need to spray and when we can increase our intervals or use different products. Currently, we are having quite high potato tuber moth population. I think it's time that we correlate the populations that we catch to weather conditions and see if we can and predict what's going to happen with the populations. But yeah, I've got 4 years of data, and I want to take the data to a statistician and see if they can get something out of the data. But we definitely, we're going to put in some weather stations, yes.
Gabriele, could we give it to you that you organize a meeting on these topics?
Absolutely, absolutely. Will do. Thank you, Dr. Denzer. I maybe just have one question. I'm not sure if anybody else, I see we're sort of running out of time, but just a question I know that's come up with previous installations is, and the one good example is we did an installation at Vergelegen Wine Estate. It's a fairly large farm, and the rainfall, solar radiation, etc., can vary quite dramatically from even a couple of kilometers, 2-3 kilometers apart. And one of the questions.
Can you give me the serial number?
Yeah, but Nate, could I possibly
send it to me in an email, please?
Sure, will do. Will do.
I will look for it.
But he asked specifically, so he's got one PESEL station under the Eureka project, and then he's got 1 or 2 others. And he said that the rainfall can vary, quite dramatically based on sort of the slope or the slant or the radiation, and he sort of wanted us to give him an idea of how many weather stations should they look at having on a farm. We're installing based on very specific points allocated to us by Stellenbosch University, by TerraClim under the project. But if farmers wanted to install more weather stations, to assist them with their work plans, how many stations do they need?
Yeah, this is very much depending on the relief. Also in the Western Cape area, in the Western Cape area.
Yes.
So I guess this means rain comes from the Arctics, from Antarctics, so from the south. And then it's depending, they may have rain shadow places and rain places depending on the relief. But I think please send me the information in an email and I will look for it and answer it, because it's, yeah, I can only answer it very theoretically in this way. So that means we have to look into the relief, we have to look into the crop, we have to look into the hectares. But when you send it to me with the geoposition and all this information, I can look into it a little more detailed and I can explain it a little better.
Thank you. Will do.
Any other questions?
I'd maybe like to ask, we essentially had today's training session with a focus on the agents whose clients we've actually installed, farms we've installed at. Has there been any feedback or commentary from your clients as to the stations as yet? Has anybody spoken to their clients about the stations? So all of them have received login details, and Yabane, who's on the call, who is essentially going to be running with the data integrity, the data that's generated by the stations. So she's been following up quite closely with them. But yeah, I'm just curious if anybody's heard anything from their clients as yet.
Can I ask, Vish, when you are working with the clients, in this project, due to the fact that they received the stations for free. In my experience, you have to take some special care that they really started. What I learned in such projects is I have to force them installing the mobile app on their phone.
Yes.
So I have to make an account for them, and I have to force them to install the mobile app. And when I did this and they see the data the first time and they have the mobile app on the phone, I can be sure that they use the data. In a similar project 2 years ago, I was just giving them an email or a text message with the account and with what app they have to install. And I had 50% of the clients not installing the app. And so I learned I have to stand aside when they install it. Because when they have it on the phone, they use the data.
Yeah.
But when they do not have it on the phone, they do not use the data. That's my experience.
Thank you, Heiner.
It's because then they are busy with everything, and the user's access to the data at the moment is close to 100% mobile phone.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then I think we can end the training. Just a reminder that you will receive an email shortly with a link to an exam on FieldClimate. This exam will be available until Thursday the 25th of November at 8 a.m. so you can complete it beforehand, and it will then also count for CPD points for you. If you have any questions that you think about after the training, you are welcome to just reply to that email and we'll direct them to Dr. Heiner Denzer for further answers. Okay, thank you very much for joining the session.
Yes.
And Dr. Heiner, thank you very much for your very thorough presentation and training on PESEL and FieldClimate.
I also thank you to everybody in the audience. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.